I've been typecast. I wouldn't say I couldn't do another job. I've
No.
done several stage plays and various other things, you know. I even had to get out of the country and go to Australia.
Who could ever forget Harold Steptoe? The lovable rogue with that cheeky grin, always coming up with some kind of wild scheme in Steptoe and Son. Played by the talented Harry H. Corbett, Harold became a household name, and for good reason. But beyond the TV screen, what was Harry's life really like? Off-screen, he had a life full of ups and downs, moments of joy and challenges that only those close to him truly understood. Now, 40 years after Harry's passing, his daughter Susan is stepping into the spotlight herself and opening up about what her father's life was really like behind the scenes. So, what exactly has she said? Join us as we take an in-depth look into the life of a true icon, from Rangoon to Manchester. Corbett was born on the 28th of February in the year 1925 as the youngest of 7 siblings. He was born in Rangoon, Burma, which is now Myanmar. His father, George Corbett, who was born around 1885 or 1886, was serving as a company quartermaster sergeant in the South Staffordshire Regiment of the British Army. At the time, George was stationed at a cantonment as part of the Colonial Defense Forces. Corbett's childhood, however, took a dramatic turn early on when tragedy struck his family. His mother, Caroline Emily, née Barnsley, born in 1884, passed away from dysentery when Corbett was just a mere 18 months old, a devastating event that would change the course of his young life. With his mother gone, Corbett was sent off to Britain, where he was taken in by his aunt, Annie Williams. Annie lived in Earl Street, Ardwick, Manchester, and eventually, Corbett found himself growing up on a new council estate in Wythenshawe. It was a far cry from the bustling streets of Rangoon, but this northern corner of England became his home. Corbett's early education was spent at Ross Place and Benchill primary schools. Despite showing academic promise and passing the scholarship exam that would have allowed him to attend Chorlton Grammar School, life had other plans. Instead of Chorlton Grammar, Corbett attended Sharston Secondary School. There, he began to carve out his path, though not without its ups and downs. World War II. When the world was deep in the chaos of the Second World War, Corbett decided to enlist in the Royal Marines. His service led him to the Home Fleet, where he served on the heavy cruiser HMS Devonshire. After the victory over Japan in 1945, Corbett found himself deployed to the Far East, where his military duties continued and the violence of war followed him. In the jungles of New Guinea, Corbett found himself facing danger once again, as he was involved in quelling unrest in the region. It was there, in the thick of hand-to-hand combat, that he reportedly killed 2 Japanese soldiers. This brutal and intense period of his life stayed with him forever. After New Guinea, Corbett was sent to Tonga, but the weight of his experiences seemed to catch up with him. He deserted and remained in Australia for a while before ultimately deciding to turn himself in to the military police. His time in the service didn't leave him unscathed. Along the way, he picked up a bladder infection that plagued him for the rest of his life. A red mark on his eye caused by a thorn also became part of his story, though it wasn't properly treated until much later. These were just a few of the physical reminders of a life shaped by war and the challenges that came with it. So how exactly did he get into acting? After Corbett returned to civilian life, he didn't jump straight into the acting world. Instead, he trained as a radiographer, a profession that was far from the spotlight but steady nonetheless. Yet, as fate would have it, acting would soon call him, and before long, Corbett decided to pursue a career on stage. He joined the Chorlton Repertory Theatre, where he began his journey in the world of performing arts. Sometime in the early 1950s, Corbett made a little tweak to his name, adding the initial H to avoid confusion with another well-known performer at the time, Harry Corbett. Harry was famous for his work with a glove puppet named Sooty, and to distinguish himself, Corbett threw in the H. When asked what the H stood for, Corbett jokingly said it was for Hennyfink, a playful Cockney way of pronouncing anything. Clearly, He had a good sense of humor. By 1956, Corbett had made it to the big stage, performing in the family reunion at the Phoenix Theatre in London. It was his first significant role, a far cry from the fame that would later follow him, but it was a sign that he was on his way up. Films, television, and the art of serious acting. Harry H. Corbett began making significant strides in his acting career in the year 1958. It was a pivotal time for him as he started to land regular film roles that showcased his burgeoning talent. One of his early notable appearances was in the film Floods of Fear. This film, styled as an American production, was actually shot at Pinewood Studios in the UK. It was in this movie that audiences were first introduced to a different facet of Corbett's acting range, one that was serious and intense. This portrayal starkly contrasted with the comedic image he would later cultivate through sitcoms. During this era, Corbett was also establishing himself on television. He began appearing in various dramas, most notably in The Adventures of Robin Hood. Over the course of several episodes from 1957 to 1960, Corbett played a range of characters, demonstrating his versatility and ability to bring different roles to life. His performances in this series helped build his reputation as a versatile and skilled actor, adept at handling a variety of roles with ease. By the year 1960, Corbett's career continued to gain momentum with his involvement in Police Surgeon, a popular show that further cemented his growing prominence in the industry. This period marked a significant phase in his career, as he was not only gaining visibility, but also honing his craft. Corbett's dedication to acting went far beyond merely appearing on screen. He was deeply committed to perfecting his art, which led him to study the prestigious Stanislavski method of acting. Under the expert guidance of Joan Littlewood at her theatre workshop in Stratford, London, Corbett immersed himself in this demanding and comprehensive training. The Stanislavski method, known for its focus on psychological realism and emotional depth, became a cornerstone of Corbett's approach to acting. His time at the theatre workshop was marked by intense study and practice, reflecting his determination to evolve into a truly well-rounded and accomplished performer. 1962 brought a big break for Corbett, though it would come with a heavy price. The famous writing duo Galton and Simpson, who had already struck gold with Hancock's Half Hour, invited Corbett to star in an episode of Comedy Playhouse, an anthology series of one-off comedy plays. The episode was called The Offer, and in it, Corbett played the character of Harold Steptoe, a rag-and-bone man who lived with his grumpy, widowed father, Albert, played by Wilfrid Bramble. Harold and Albert's home was a run-down house attached to their junkyard where they kept their horse, Hercules. At the time, Corbett was balancing his work on the show with his role as Macbeth at the Bristol Old Vic, showing just how serious he was about his craft. Yet, The Offer was a hit, and soon the BBC turned it into a full series called Steptoe and Son. The show became wildly popular, running until 1974 with occasional breaks, with a Christmas special marking its final episode. But here's the catch. While Steptoe and Son made Corbett a household name, it also became a bit of a curse. He was so deeply associated with the role of Harold Steptoe that it started to impact his ability to take on other parts. Before the show, Corbett had received great acclaim for his performance as Shakespeare's Richard II. But by the time he played Hamlet in 1970, audiences and critics alike couldn't get past the fact that he was Steptoe. They couldn't see him as anything else. Corbett found himself being typecast, with offers pouring in for bawdy comedies or worse, spoofs of his Steptoe character. He couldn't break free from the public's perception of him, and it became a significant frustration in his acting career. The success of Steptoe and Son brought its own set of challenges behind the scenes. As the years went on, production became increasingly stressful for Corbett. Wilfrid Bramble, who played his on-screen father, was struggling with alcoholism. Bramble frequently showed up unprepared for rehearsals, forgetting lines and blocking. It was tough on Corbett, who had to carry much of the load. In 1977, the duo embarked on a tour of Steptoe and Son in Australia and New Zealand, but it turned out to be a disaster. Bramble's drinking got out of hand, causing chaos during the tour. It was a low point in their partnership. Despite the difficulties, the popularity of Steptoe and Son was undeniable. The television episodes were eventually adapted for radio, and much of the original cast was brought back to record them. These radio episodes became available on cassette and CD, extending the show's reach even further. After the series officially ended, Corbett and Bramble reprised their roles as Harold and Albert Steptoe a few more times, including a new radio sketch written for the 1978 World Cup, to tie in with Scotland's participation. They also reunited for a television commercial for Kenco Coffee, a nostalgic nod to their characters. In January of 1981, they did one final performance as Steptoe and Son, again for a Kenco Coffee advert, bringing their legendary pairing to a close. So what exactly was his life like behind the scenes? The man behind Harold Steptoe. Hidden away from the grime and clutter of Steptoe's junkyard, Harry H. Corbett's life was a rich tapestry of experiences, just as layered and intricate as the characters he brought to life on screen. To the public, he was forever known as the eternally exasperated Harold Steptoe, perpetually grappling with his cantankerous old father. But Corbett's real life was a bit more nuanced and full of its own set of trials and triumphs as he navigated the tricky balance of fame, family, and his creative aspirations. Corbett's personal life was a blend of joy and sorrow, with moments of happiness intertwined with heartache. His first marriage was to Sheila Steele, an actress he met while working with Joan Littlewood's theater workshop. Although their connection was real, the marriage didn't withstand the test of time. By the time the year 1964 arrived, their relationship had ended, coinciding with Corbett's rise to fame through Steptoe and Son, which was rapidly making him a household name across the UK. But fate had more in store for him. In the year 1969, Corbett found love again with Maureen Blott, an actress and dancer who brought a much-needed sense of stability to his life. With Maureen by his side, Corbett discovered a new rhythm and a sense of peace. Their marriage was blessed with the arrival of two wonderful children, Susanna and Jonathan. Becoming a dad was one of Corbett's greatest joys. Despite the whirlwind of his career, he embraced fatherhood with immense dedication. He often spoke of his children as his greatest pride, and he made a conscious effort to be a loving and involved father, even when the demands of his public life threatened to pull him away. The cost of fame and fortune. While Steptoe and Son made Corbett a household name, bringing him financial stability and a degree of fame that many actors only dream of, it also came with a price. Corbett found himself pigeonholed as Harold Steptoe, a role that had its moments of comedic brilliance but became something of a trap for him. Even as he tried to take on new and diverse roles, the public and even the industry itself struggled to see past the rag-and-bone man character. This typecasting weighed heavily on Corbett, frustrating his desire to show off his range as an actor. As the pressures of being in the spotlight mounted, Corbett turned to alcohol as a way to cope. The relentless demands of his role as Harold Steptoe also began to affect his body. He developed back issues and other physical ailments from the grueling performance schedule, which, combined with the strain of maintaining a public persona, made life tougher than many might have realized. A wake-up call and new priorities. When Steptoe and Son was nearing its end, Corbett had a major health scare that forced him to reevaluate his life. He suffered a heart attack, a stark reminder of how much the stress, fame, and physical demands had taken a toll on him. This wake-up call pushed Corbett to make some necessary changes. After his recovery, he began to lead a healthier lifestyle. He cut back on his drinking, did his best to manage stress more effectively, and took a more thoughtful approach to his career, becoming pickier about the roles he accepted. But the reality was that his health would continue to be a concern. something that loomed over him in the years that followed. Despite these hurdles, Corbett remained in the entertainment industry. He continued to act in various television shows and films, though none of these projects ever reached the iconic heights of Steptoe and Son. That didn't stop him from working, but there was a growing sense that Corbett had come to terms with the idea that Harold Steptoe would always be his most famous role. Over time, he seemed to make peace with that fact, realizing that while it may have limited him in some ways, it also brought laughter and joy to millions of people. In his later years, Corbett shifted his focus more toward his family. He took great pleasure in watching his children, Susanna and Jonathan, grow up, and took time to be with his wife, Maureen. Family life became his anchor, something that kept him grounded as he reflected on his career and the legacy he was leaving behind. Though he never fully escaped the shadow of Harold Steptoe, Corbett found contentment in the life he built, and the joy he brought into the world through his work became something he could be proud of. Now, how exactly did he pass? Battling health issues and embracing new roles. Harry H. Corbett was a heavy smoker throughout his adult life. His daughter Susanna once mentioned that at his peak, Corbett was smoking a staggering 60 cigarettes a day. This habit eventually caught up with him, and in September of 1979, Corbett suffered his first heart attack. It was a wake-up call of sorts. Afterward, he managed to cut his smoking down to 20 cigarettes a day, which, while still a hefty amount, was a big improvement for him. Surprisingly, just 2 days after being discharged from the hospital, Corbett was back on stage, appearing in a pantomime at the Churchill Theatre in Bromley. It was clear that not even a heart attack could slow him down for long. However, life threw another curveball his way when he was badly injured in a car accident shortly after his recovery. The injuries were particularly noticeable when he returned to the screen in the BBC detective series Shoestring not long afterward, but Corbett powered through as always. 1980, Corbett continued to take on new projects. He appeared in the film Silver Dream Racer, starring alongside David Essex, which added a bit of variety to his resume. That same year, he also starred in a Thames Television ITV comedy series called Grundy. In this show, Corbett played an older man who, after a lifetime of clean living, suddenly found himself confronting the permissive society of the 1970s. The role allowed Corbett to stretch his comedic chops in a new way, and it seemed like he was finally beginning to move past the typecasting that had dogged him for so long. A bittersweet farewell. Corbett's final role would come in an episode of the Anglia Television ITV series Tales of the Unexpected, in a story titled The Moles. Filmed shortly before his passing, the episode would not air until May of 1982, 2 months after his death. It was a haunting reminder of the talents Corbett brought to every role he played, whether in comedy or drama. Although Steptoe and Son had ended some years earlier, Corbett kept busy with a variety of film and television projects, showing a real determination to break free from the pigeonhole the show had placed him in. In many ways, he was succeeding. Audiences were finally beginning to see Corbett as more than just Harold Steptoe. He was starting to get roles that reflected his range and skill as an actor. Unfortunately, just as it seemed he was turning a corner in his career, tragedy struck. On the 21st of March in 1982, Corbett suffered another heart attack, this time fatal. He passed away in Hastings, East Sussex at the age of 57. There's been a lot of buzz about Corbett since he passed away, but his daughter has finally cleared things up. So, what did she say? Debunking the myths. In one interview, she mentioned how they lived in a pretty rural area. They had 3 donkeys. She said her father was working on a show and was chatting with the animal handler. The handler said, "I have a donkey that needs a new home. It's retiring from acting. It used to carry Jesus, Mary, and Joseph around." And Corbett was like, "Yeah, we'll take it." He called his mom and said, "Donkey?" She said, "Yeah, that's great." But then he called back 5 minutes later and said, "It has a friend." She said, "Okay, 2 is fine." And guess what? 5 minutes later, he called again and said, the friend has a foal. So, they ended up with 3 donkeys. In the years that followed Harry H. Corbett's passing, a complicated web of myths, misunderstandings, and exaggerated stories began to take root. These myths, often fueled by media narratives and the cultural obsession with behind-the-scenes drama, threatened to overshadow the true legacy of the man who brought Harold Steptoe to life. Over time, these stories started to paint a distorted picture of Harry, one that didn't always align with the man his friends and family had known. It was in the midst of this swirling rumor mill that Harry's daughter, Susanna Corbett, felt a strong pull to set the record straight. For Susanna, writing her father's biography wasn't just about chronicling his career, it was personal. She had spent her whole life hearing stories about her father, stories that often contradicted the reality of the man she had known. These public misconceptions hadn't just hurt Harry's legacy, they'd also cast a shadow over the Corbett family. The rumors about Harry supposedly hating Steptoe and Son and his alleged bitter feud with his co-star Wilfrid Bramble were particularly damaging. Susanna knew that much of what people believed simply wasn't true, and she felt a sense of responsibility to honor her father's memory in a way that reflected who he really was. She wasn't just interested in preserving his legacy as an actor, she wanted to present an accurate picture of Harry H. Corbett as a person, something far more important than the sensationalized versions of his life that were being passed around. One event that pushed Susanna to take action was the BBC biopic The Curse of Steptoe. The show had caused quite a stir because of its controversial portrayal of Harry's life. The program played fast and loose with the facts, painting Harry as a man consumed by bitterness, trapped in a toxic, hostile relationship with Wilfrid Bramble. This depiction deeply upset Susanna and the Corbett family because it didn't align with their memories of Harry or the reality of his relationship with Bramble. In her research, Susanna uncovered a far more complex picture of her father's feelings about Steptoe and Son. Yes, there were frustrations. Harry was, after all, an actor who wanted to stretch his wings and not be confined to one role. But his relationship with Steptoe was far more nuanced than the media had suggested. At the start, Harry was genuinely excited about the role. It was only after years of playing the same character and struggling to escape typecasting that frustration set in. However, this didn't mean he hated the show. He was, in fact, proud of what he had accomplished with Steptoe and Son. He just wished he could have had more opportunities to explore his full range as an actor. Reclaiming the story. Susanna's biography aimed to present a more well-rounded, authentic version of her father's life. She didn't shy away from the challenges Harry faced, his battle with typecasting, his health issues, the complexities of his relationship with fame. But she also wanted to highlight the parts of him that the public never saw. The man who was a loving father, a dedicated actor, and someone who, like many, wrestled with the double-edged sword that is success in show business. For Susanna, the goal was not just to correct the inaccuracies, but to show the real Harry H. Corbett, a man with highs and lows, moments of joy and times of frustration, who ultimately left an indelible mark on British television. By reclaiming his story, she hoped to give people a fuller understanding of her father's life, far beyond the role that made him famous. In doing so, Susanna brought Harry's legacy into sharper focus, allowing his accomplishments to shine while acknowledging the human being behind the iconic role of Harold Steptoe. Susanna Corbett. Born right in the heart of London's bustling Marylebone neighborhood, Susanna Corbett was destined to be in the limelight. With her father, the legendary Harry H. Corbett, being a household name on British television, the world of entertainment was practically in her DNA. But despite that larger-than-life legacy casting a long shadow, Susanna was determined to carve out her own path, one that would reflect her diverse talents as both an actor and a writer. Her early years were steeped in the arts. Growing up in a home where creativity was all around her, Susanna was naturally drawn to performance. She attended Moira House School in Eastbourne, nestled in the scenic East Sussex area, where her love for the performing arts truly began to flourish. Her passion for acting led her to the prestigious East 15 Acting School in Debden Loughton, Essex, a place renowned for producing talented actors. Here, Susanna worked tirelessly to hone her craft, knowing that her famous last name alone wouldn't be enough to carry her. Susanna's acting career officially kicked off in 1991. It was a modest start, with a small role in the blockbuster Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Sure, she wasn't exactly front and center. She played a part labeled simply as Lady and Coach, but it was a foot in the door of the film industry. That same year, she made her television debut in ITV's Minder, a comedy drama that showcased her talent and proved that she had inherited more than just her father's last name. She had his skill and presence, too. 2 years later, in 1993, Susanna caught her first major break when she appeared in an episode of Peak Practice. Her role as a character suffering from cystic fibrosis opened up new doors for her in British television, and suddenly, she was on a roll. But it wasn't until she landed the role of Ellie Pascoe in the BBC drama Dalziel and Pascoe that Susanna truly became a household name. From 1996 to 2000, she brought Ellie to life as the supportive, loving wife of Peter Pascoe, one of the main characters in the show based on Reginald Hill's novels. The role was a perfect fit for her, and audiences loved her. She even made a guest appearance in 2005, just to remind everyone that she hadn't lost her touch. A career full of surprises. After her success in Dalziel and Pascoe, Susanna wasn't done with Peak Practice just yet. She returned to the show, this time taking on the role of Carrie Davidson, a dedicated physiotherapist, and stayed on for 3 more series. Her star continued to rise, with guest spots on British television shows like Holby City, where she made an appearance in October of 2015, showcasing her versatility as an actress. But acting wasn't the only passion Susanna had discovered. Along the way, she developed a deep love for writing. Initially, it started with stories for her own children, born out of bedtime inspiration. But soon, this creative outlet blossomed into something more. In August of 2009, Susanna published her very first children's picture book, Dragon's Dinner. It was a hit, and 2 years later, in the spring of 2011, she followed it up with One Cool Cat, proving that her talents extended well beyond the screen. She had become a successful children's author, a role she embraced with just as much enthusiasm as her acting career, honoring her father's legacy. But Susanna's journey as a writer didn't end with children's books. She had another story to tell, one that was deeply personal. The myths and misconceptions surrounding her father, Harry H. Corbett, had been swirling for years. The public's perception of him had been clouded by rumors, especially those surrounding his role on Steptoe and Son. It was a narrative that Susanna felt compelled to reclaim, not just for herself, but for her father's legacy. In March of 2012, Susanna published Harry H. Corbett, The Front Legs of the Cow, a biography that peeled back the layers of myth to reveal the real story of the man behind Harold Steptoe. It was a labor of love for Susanna, driven by her desire to share her father's true story, the one that went beyond the character he was so famously known for. In the book, she gave readers a glimpse into her father's life, his challenges, his triumphs, and the man he was when the cameras weren't rolling. Through all her professional successes, Susanna has managed to balance her career with her personal life. She has created a peaceful home with her husband, Dan Hallam, in a quaint cottage nestled in Ashburnham, East Sussex. Together, they have 2 children, and Susanna has always prioritized her family, finding inspiration in her children for her writing, while also maintaining a deep connection to her roots. For Susanna Corbett, the journey has been about finding her own voice, even as she honors her father's. She has built a life filled with creativity, love, and respect for both her craft and her family. A life that truly reflects the woman behind the name. Now it's time to hear from you. If Harry H. Corbett was alive today, how might he view the current landscape of British comedy? What roles could you imagine him taking on? Let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching. While you're still here, click the video on your screen to see more interesting content like this one.